everyone, it's Theo from Spectrum Gardening. So you may or may have not noticed that we're not featuring our garden a lot on this channel this year. And it's something that we were actually really looking forward to do so we could showcase all the things that we're growing. However, our garden is doing really poorly. The best part of our garden actually is in the greenhouse. That's why I shoot a lot of things in here, because it's so green and it looks so lush. So when we built our beds, we needed about 16 yards of soil. And I'll be honest, for our cost alone, our purchase cost, that would have been right around $1,000 plus us trucking it in ourselves with our dump trailer. So we had the thought, well, we're going to fill up the beds about 60 to 70% with moo poo. Moo poo is something that we sell. It's separated dairy manure. So the way it works is I work with a dairy farmer directly for this, and they use sand as their bedding. So what they do, they send the sand through a machine. They send the manure and the sand mixture through a machine, and it removes the sand and it also removes the water. So what the moo poo basically is, it's fibers. It's organic fibers. It's a very high value of organic matter. Really great to help jumpstart an ecosystem because of the amount of fungi and the amount of bacteria that can grow in it. However, it's very high in carbon. So previously, at our old place, when we built our greenhouse last time, we filled our beds about 50% with a moo poo, and it worked really well. So this time when we were filling our beds and we need 16 yards of soil, we thought, well, you know what? We'll fill it up about 60 to 70% with moo poo, and we're gonna save money that way. It actually worked out. We spent less than $300 on soil because we put so much moo poo in there. Well, plus the trucking cost. However, that being said, early in the year we noticed some issues that we were having with the garden. We couldn't quite pinpoint them. We had a feeling that they may have been a couple things, but we were waiting on an actual soil test to be completed before we could actually address them properly, and before we wanted to kind of explain what's going on with it in the video. So I'm going to go over the soil test. I'll go over a previous nutritional analysis of the moo poo, and I'm also going to, at the end of the video, outline what we're going to be doing to solve the issues that we're having going forward. So let's have a quick tour of the garden. I'll show you guys around so you can see what's doing well and what's not doing well. This is one part of the greenhouse. So on this side over here, we have hot peppers. And as we move down here, they get continually less and less hot. I also have basil planted throughout here. So there's some peppers and there's some plants in here that are doing really good. They really are. Are they doing as good as previous years? Probably not, no, but they're doing much better than the rest of the garden. So we've got our sweet peppers in the frame right now. And as we move over here, we've got eggplant. So it's quite lush, quite green, and things look quite vibrant in here. But if you look at the leaves carefully, you can see a little bit of yellowing on the pepper leaves here. You can see some more yellowing here. You can definitely see some on the watermelon that I have over here. And if we go over here to another type of pepper, this one's a hotter pepper. Let's see if I can get a better shot. If we look at this leaf right here, you can see some yellowing on that one as well. This is our main tomato bed here. In this front kind of empty looking space, I have broccoli, kohlrabi, broccoli rabe, and beets planted. And over here, I actually planted another tomato that I got from a friend of ours because ours were doing so poorly. I also have two more watermelon planted there, but you can see that they're not really going to be doing very much. And the yellowing on the leaves over here is a lot more evident. I've got some basil planted along here. And now let's check out these beans. So if we take a closer look at these beans over here, look how like white and yellow that leaf is. But then also look how green that one is there. When our beans first germinated, they were all yellow. But if we pan over there, these are the same beans, but they were planted about 2 or 3 weeks earlier, and you can see how lush and green that is. So the reason for the yellowing the leaves is the pH is a little bit too high for beans. And I'll get into a little bit more on that later on about exactly what level our pH is and what we're going to be doing to correct it. But it's the end of July, and look at this tomato. Look how small it is, and look how kind of skinny it is. It's got one small fruit on it, and it's a sun gold, so it's one of our best producers. And this one's also a small cherry tomato, but you can look kind of how sickly these plants look. Like look at the leaves on there, they look yellow. This one over here, you can see some purpling behind the leaves. And like they just don't look like they're happy, healthy plants. And we knew this earlier in the season, but we also thought maybe we put our plants out a little bit too early and we stunted our tomatoes. And that's kind of why that they were not really growing too much. And you can look at this one here, like it's not happy at all. Same with this one, it's actually kind of dying on me. And then there's a crimson, giant crimson over there, and you can see how small this one is right here. Our beans, on the other hand, are doing really well. They are, well now they are, they're producing fruit there, and I can see that there's some more fruit, some more beans over there as well. Our second bed over here, it's got more tomatoes in it. It's got more beans. Some of these tomatoes in here are actually doing okay. If we check out Chocolate Stripes, it's not the best looking tomato, it's not the way it should be, but it's doing much better than our other ones. The beans are having the same issue, same yellowing issue. Again, it's a pH issue. So the best tomato that we actually have growing this year, it's this one right here. This one is actually our daughter's favorite tomato, and it's actually looking relatively healthy compared to the other ones. But that being said, it's not where it should be at all. This is actually a Russian variety. It's an Oxheart, and I grow that every year for her. And over here we've got more cucumbers, and if we look at the leaves again, we've got more yellowing of the leaves there. And we've got carrots planted in between here, in that empty space there. If you're interested in a carrot experiment, I'm experimenting this year of which ones do better, either pelleted, tape, or kind of normal varieties of seeds. So we've got more cucumbers over there, and you can see everything's really small. And over here we have winter squashes, we've got zucchini. I did have peas down there in the back initially. I had a trellis that went all the way this way, but I took that out and I put up that this big arbor kind of looking thing. I call it a T trellis because it kind of looks like a T. And I will be installing this type of trellis in all my beds over there to help maximize the space. And if you're worried about if you're thinking it's going to be blocking the sun actually comes in from over here. So the shade will be in the back of the bed. So I won't actually be shading anything out that badly. But you can see that like things are not happy in the garden. The best looking plants we had was these broccolis. But I'll be honest, the first little heat wave that we had, all the broccoli, they went to seed. So I didn't really get much of a harvest out of them at all. So the easiest thing to grow is lettuce, right? It doesn't need much nutrition, it doesn't really need very much at all, right? Well, I planted this lettuce when it was right around, I planted them all, probably almost 2 months ago. And check out them now, they're still They're still tiny. I have yet to get a harvest out of this lettuce. That's just how it is. I could kind of go and cut them right here if I wanted really small ones, but they're so small and I'd have to cut down the whole patch just to get something out of there, that I've been hoping to kind of leave them longer, and I'm kind of hoping that they're going to be growing. My leeks that I have planted throughout multiple beds, I planted them in February or something, and you can see how skinny they are still. So this is kind of why I haven't been showing very much about the garden, because the state that it's in, because how bad it looks. It's not lush, it's not green. This is, to be honest, our worst year ever gardening. However, there's a reason for that, and there's ways that we can be fixing this going forward. Earlier I was talking about how much carbon is in the moo poo and what it's like. It's basically fiber. So I was able to find a couple chunks of the moo poo on top of the soil. Keep in mind that this has been kind of out for about 6 or 8 months or so, just sitting on top of the soil, drying out. So it looks like this, and you can see how basically it crumbles. And all it basically is it's basically what the cows eat, the leftovers. So it's like that. It's like the leftover straw, the silage, and the corn that the cows kind of pass to their bodies. There's not much in there for nitrogen or major nutrient. I was able to kind of find a chunk of manure, a moo poo, mixed in with a little bit of soil. So if you check out there, that's the brown spots there, and all that brown, that's moo poo. You can see that it's very wet, like damp and fibrous. So if we break it open and we look at it, if we look at all those white dots in there, that's all fungi and bacteria on that one, and that's more fungi. If we look right there where my thumb is, and we look where my finger is, that's more fungi and bacteria. So I know they're breaking down the moo poo, and I know they're kind of doing their job of what they're supposed to be doing. They're breaking it down. But because I put so much carbon in here in the form of moo poo, they're taking a very long time to break it down. Like if we look at this chunk of moo poo right here, it's damp, it's fibrous. It's almost like peat moss in some sort of sorts, but it's manure. And you can see how nice those fibers look. Great source of organic matter, but it just presents a nitrogen carbon issue. I'm going to talk about the moo poo first. Since I sell both the moo poo and the soil, I've actually had them tested by a third-party lab, so my customers know exactly what kind of nutrition they get. So with the moo poo, I'll throw a picture up, but just keep in mind the measurements for this picture is going to be per ton. What I'll be breaking it down is per pound. So the nitrogen value in the moo poo per pound is 0.5%, and for phosphorus it's 0.15, and for potassium it's 0.25. For calcium it's 0.32, and for magnesium it's 0.09. You're gonna have to forgive me as I read off the sheet, but I want to make sure I'm telling you the right info. So it's very low in nutrients. What it basically is organic matter. It has about 16.4% of organic matter in it. It's got about 20% of dry matter in it. Just check out that carbon to nitrogen ratio. It's 37 to 1. So that means it's 37 parts of calcium, 37 parts of carbon to 1 part of nitrogen. It basically puts it on par with leaves, with dry leaves. So as we all know, leaves take a very long time to break down. Same with the moo poo. It's a huge amount of organic matter, huge amount of bacteria, and a huge amount of fungi that you can be putting into your beds, but it's going to be so what I did for my soil tests, I went to each one of my beds and I took samples from multiple places from my beds. I took all those multiple samples, I mixed them together in one big giant batch, and I took a smaller sample from that, and I sent that sample off to the lab. And I'll throw a picture up of what exactly I'll be reading out, because I've got a sheet that I printed out here. So I'm going to go through the whole thing, and then I'm going to kind of cover what we're going to be doing to fix these issues this year and going forward. I'm not going to be covering every little aspect of the soil test because I don't think I need to. I'm just going to address what we're having issues with. So check out the first column, N, which stands for nitrogen. It barely registers. So that doesn't mean that there's no nitrogen in my soil. What it means is because the moo poo is so high in carbon, it's the bacteria and the microorganisms, they're busy breaking down that carbon right now. They're basically, my nitrogen, my food for my soil is busy breaking down that carbon, all the moo poo, so it's not available for my plants to grow. So that's why it barely registers. My phosphorus is really good. We're going to check out my calcium though. My calcium is very high. It's 7,696 parts per million. While it does say it's optimum there, if you check out my potassium, which is K, it's only 333 parts per million. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to put in potassium to kind of bring up the level, because what's happening right now is the calcium levels are so high that it's actually preventing the plants from uptaking their potassium and causing issues. Remember the moo poo? How it was the calcium in it was 0.32%, and then it's also the calcium from the soil that I used. So the iron's good, everything else, all the other nutrients are good across the board. Now let's check out the pH. The pH is 7.7. You remember how I was talking about how the leaves were yellow on my tomatoes earlier in the year and how they're yellow on the beans? Well, that's because my pH level, it's a little too high. For the type of veggie crops I'm going to be growing, I want it to be, like for tomatoes, they can grow in about 5 pH, but that's going to be a little bit too alkaline for other veggies. But most of the veggies that I'm going to be growing, they want it to be right around 6 to maximum 7 on the pH scale. So with it being 7.7, it's a little too high for a lot of veggies. So what I'm going to have to be doing, I'll be taking sulfur, like this sulfur right here. You can buy any sulfur, you can use any sulfur will do. I just tend to have this one on hand. I'll be taking that and I'll be applying it to my soil at roughly 1 to 2 pounds 100 square feet, and then I will be retesting the soil to make sure my pH is coming down. So my EC level, which is the salt content in the soil, that's good. It's not high at all. It's only 0.631, which is great. Now let's check out the organic matter. The organic matter on the sheet, on the picture, is OM. So I'm at 16.4% of organic matter in the soil. That's a huge amount of organic matter. It really is. Most soils tend to only have between 2 and 5% of organic matter in them. Let's go back to the nitrogen for a second. So with it being less than 1 parts per million in the soil test, what I'm going to be having to do, at least temporarily, until all the carbon's broken down, until the nitrogen is again available in the soil, I'm going to have to use high nitrogen fertilizers. What I was recommended to do is apply the high N. We sell this also. This one here is 1105. It's made out of sugar cane extract. So it has its nitrogen will be available very quickly to the plants. I was recommended to add this at roughly 125 pounds per acre. And I was also recommended to add feather meal at roughly 100 pounds per acre. So the way that it kind of breaks down is it's roughly, here I've got it broken down here, I'm going to cheat and take a look. It's going to be roughly about 1.5 pounds per 100 square feet of this for my required amount. and it's going to be probably a little bit less than that of the feather meal for my required amount. So the reason I want to be using feather meal and the high N is because the high N is made out of sugar cane extract, and it's available to the plants very quickly. The feather meal, and it's only going to be available in the soil maximum for 4 months. The feather meal, on the other hand, it's going to take a very long time to break down. The lifespan on the feather meal is roughly about 6 months. So my high N will give food to my plants right away. The feather meal will kind of help break down the existing carbon in the soil to kind of give it a jump start on that. But I don't have feather meal. So what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be doubling up on this. Instead of 125 pounds per acre, I'm going to be applying 250 pounds per acre, so that's going to be roughly about three and a half cups of this per 100 square feet. So because I have very low nitrogen in my soil, my first thought was over the winter was to grow a cover crop of beans or things like that, or field peas, because they're going to help build up nitrogen in the soil. However, cover crops are normally tilled into the soil, and that's their whole purpose, to add more nutrients and add more nitrogen and add more things, food for the plant. With my organic matter being so high at 16.4%, 16.4%, I actually don't want any organic matter any more organic matter in my soil. I want it to break down a bit more before I'm going to be adding it in. So that kind of rules out pretty much all the cover crops, unless I'm going to be doing a cover crop like broad beans that's going to help protect the soil over winter, and the frost will kill it. I haven't decided what I'm going to be doing with the soil over the winter. I haven't decided if I'm just going to be mulching it to protect it, or if I'm going to be planting some winter crops to kind of add more things in that way. I don't know yet. I'm going to see how this summer goes. I'm going to see how I feel, and we'll figure it out kind of when we get there. And I'll be sure to make a video of kind of what I'll be doing about that also. Despite my numbers with the soil test kind of being out of whack this year, I know in the long term I'm building great soil. This year it does kind of suck. It sucks a lot, I'll be honest with you. This is our worst year ever in the garden. I mean, ever. That being said, I know it's not going to be like this for every year, and I know this is a stepping stone into building a very healthy ecosystem in the soil. You saw that chunk of mupu I pulled out. It's full of fungi, it's full of bacteria. All that is going to be into my soil ecosystem later on. It's just going to be a few steps to get there. What I'm also going to be doing is I'm going to be visiting another farmer I know, and I'm going to be going into his manure pit, and his manure is different than the dairy separate manure. It's all the scrapings, it's everything from his barn. And I checked out his manure the other day, and I was digging in his pile, and it's just chocked full of worms. I mean, just chocked. Like I pulled back the pile, there's so many worms, like there I couldn't even count them. So I'm going to be visiting his manure pile, and I'll be filling up quite a few buckets of his manure that has worms in it, and I'll be going to my garden beds, and I'll be burying that manure in multiple places throughout my garden beds, so I can integrate those worms and I can integrate that biology into my beds, so it'll help break down not only the organic matter but also the carbon, and it'll introduce new bacteria and new microorganisms into the soil. Thanks for watching. If you found this video interesting, or if you found it helpful maybe with the issues that you're having in your garden, give us a thumbs up. We'd really appreciate it. And if you have any questions or comments about what I explained in this video, throw them down in the section down below, and we will of course answer them. And if you would like to see our journey in fixing the soil and the next soil test that we're going to be performing in the early spring, and what we're going to be doing this year to kind of help jumpstart it for other years, hit that subscribe button. because we will be doing follow-up videos of how the garden will be doing in the fall and what we're going to be choosing to be doing with it over winter.